Hello, and welcome to our Faith and Mental Health series at New City Church. This is Trey Hayman, and I'm Carly Butler. Sup is, I guess, what we're saying today. Today, we're going to dive into the concept of joy and what Scripture has to tell us about joy, and also our experiences with joy and happiness. So kind of fun today. So we'll start out.
Saying crying is not fun, Carly?
Not for me. I don't enjoy that. Some people do, but some people like that release.
It does do some things for you.
Yeah, I kind of avoid it at all costs, and
also fair.
It's fine, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about happiness. So
happy tears.
Way to bring up sadness within 3 seconds of our happiness
You're
joy
welcome.
podcast.
Here to contribute.
Okay, so first question. What is something that makes you happy?
The sappy answer being my wife and my son, hanging out with them. That's really fun. I also really enjoy if I have like a night by myself that is just like totally free to do whatever with no plans. That's amazing. That makes me happy, and I really enjoy that.
We are so different. Okay. Well, for me, I was thinking like, of course, my husband also makes me happy. My dog makes me happy, but I'm going to save that for my joy answer.
Oh.
Yeah. I think happiness, I love sugar and like desserts. And so a quick fix is like baking a chocolate chip cookie and just when it's warm out of the oven.
So even the process of making it.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool.
The tactile, like, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, like going to dinner with someone or getting coffee with people, or I'm trying to think what else.
Do you enjoy going to dinner by yourself?
No.
Oh, that's amazing.
I finally am able to do that occasionally if I must in my 30s. Otherwise, I'm like, I will Uber Eats. No one can see me out by myself. How embarrassing.
Yeah,
also
I
lonely.
Will totally go to eat by myself. Like I'm on a trip or something and like eating by myself. I can just bring a book or sit and eat and enjoy myself. And yeah, I'm like totally comfortable with it now, and I really enjoy it.
I'm more comfortable with it. It definitely doesn't make me happy. I would much rather someone be there.
I mean, I like eating with people too. Like that's fine, depending on the person.
I do like people. Let me preface that.
I do, but I also enjoy being by myself.
Also like reading. I love to read. So a good fiction, a good mystery, or something like that.
This probably speaks more to my mental state, but I enjoy like things that make me happy. I'll enjoy reading, like I'm reading something about cults right now, and that's pretty fun.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm weird.
Although I have that reaction to you, and like the last couple of things, well, the last thing I read and the thing that I'm reading now, both fiction, are like thrillery.
Sure.
And about like
I like
a girl that goes missing, which like it's so
it's
creepy.
Sad.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah, not just pretty sad. It's a little sad. It's very sad. I think I like things that make me think and understand people and just like get my mind naturally runs pretty quickly, runs a lot. And so I think reading things that make me think about something different or that are thought-provoking just in general bring me happiness in a sort of weird sort of way.
I feel like I'm similar but different. So like my mind runs really quickly as well, and I tend to like overanalyze things or sit in them for too long, or especially like past situations. So I like the escape. And so to me, reading a nonfiction is not escaping. It's like even more like sitting in, because I naturally just go towards how do I apply this or think about this through situations I've experienced. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. I also really love comedies. So Those make me happy.
Yeah,
a good joke.
Good joke.
Do you have any good jokes?
Oh man, you put me on the spot.
I know. I should.
Well, I will say we had growth group the other day, which whenever this airs is much later, but we were talking about a passage in John chapter 10 where Jesus refers to himself as the good shepherd, implying that we are the sheep, and I said that means that we are bad. That's the reaction I got in the group too.
Okay.
I got one laugh.
That was your joke. That's his go-to joke. The one that I can I wish I could remember, like, recall jokes way better. The one I always remember, which is real dumb, is like, what did Sushi A say to Sushi B?
Sushi C?
Wasabi! Because wasabi.
Oh. Nice.
It's dumb. Yeah.
Got it.
It's dumb. It's thought provoking, apparently, though. So.
Wasabi. Yeah.
Okay, so what is something that brings you, or some things that bring you joy?
Joy. And I'm guessing, are we saying that those two things are different?
Yeah, that's the next question.
That's the next question, so I cannot answer yet. Well, Scripture, Jesus tells me the joy of the Lord. The Bible tells me the joy of the Lord is my strength. But actually, though, like, I really do, like, I know I'm, like, joking about that, but in all seriousness, like, at least in this present moment, that is very, like, that verse feels very true and, like, resonates deeply within my soul. I know that might sound trite, but that's something that really brings me deep joy, like sweet time with God. And I think maybe we'll talk about this later in this episode, but even just the idea that, like, it's, like, fun and enjoyable, can be fun and enjoyable to be with God, and, like, just delighting in his presence. Sabbath can be really fun, just, like, doing things that I enjoy and recognizing, like, that it's a gift from God. So whether that's, like, spending time with Anna, my wife, or our son, playing cards with friends, like, having a nice drink or whatever, like, all that, like, can be things that tap me into a sense of joy of, like, these are beautiful things from God. And yeah, so maybe that sounds super spiritual, but, like, that's a very real reality for where in this moment I presently find myself that I may not have been able to say a couple years ago. What about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I call these, like, spiritual adjace, because it's like, which is short for adjacent, but, like, it's definitely like the Lord is in these things, and that's why it brings me so much joy. But, you know, spending time with, like, Daniel, like, us cooking a meal together and then sitting down and eating it together. I think breaking bread in general.
Do you ever just, like, get bread and just, like, crumble it in front of people? You do that, though?
I've never done that before. Have you?
No, but if I did, that would be the yeast of my problems. Stop it, I'm on a roll. All right, I'm sorry for interrupting. Keep going.
I have crumbled bread to make homemade croutons. Yum.
That is delicious.
Yeah. Or, like, spending time with our dog, who is, like, the goofiest thing. But it's just, like, these moments of joy that you can see in the creation of, like, even, like, this dog has a personality, and it's so funny to watch that come out in different ways. And then, yeah, I think singing for me is a big one. So, again, just, like, this thing that's, like, deeper than the surface level act of singing a song. It's, like, something that connects me to something deeper.
When you say singing, is it, like, anything in particular? Is it a worship song? Do you make up your own songs? Do you just sing about random things? Do you sing songs to your dog? Do you serenade your husband Daniel? Like, what?
All of that describes me.
All of that.
Uh-huh.
I find myself now being a dad, I'd make up a lot of songs.
Yeah.
A lot of them have, like Frozen melody to it. Or they have some other melody usually. Occasionally I make up something new.
Yeah, yeah. Archie has a couple songs for him. That's my dog. So, um,
Nice.
usually those are to the tune of something else, like a musical theater song or something. I won't name the song. I don't know if we're allowed to do that or not.
Oh,
Surely
yeah.
we don't have to pay for. I don't know. I don't know.
I said frozen, but I just mean icy.
The coldness.
The coldness.
Yeah. I make up songs. I write songs. I sing other people's songs. I will sing pop songs, worship songs. I mean, any
hardcore, heavy metal songs.
That's not really my genre.
I believe in you.
Okay. I'll try that later.
Good. That and hip hop. Combine the two.
Yeah, if you know me, those are not I'm not cool enough to be good at those.
Those were my jam. Hip hop still. I wasn't more like heavy metal growing up. Punk, particular, and then ventured slightly into the realm of like heavy metal, more alt rock with an occasional scream. But had some friends who were pretty heavy into screamo. So
yeah, I did too.
Maybe that once again speaks to my inner mental state at that particular time. It was a way of expressing things that I think internally I was feeling.
Yeah, also that was very, very popular at that time.
That's true, it was.
A lot of my guy friends listened to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I think this speaks to like even what makes us happy can be very subjective. Even with this joyful question, right? Both of us started out by some statement of like, it's the Lord and things that the Lord has blessed us with. And our answers in some ways had some similarities, but like also some pretty notable differences. And so the things that make you happy or joyful or whatever, bring you pleasure or delight, might be different than someone else. And that can be totally okay and even good, and just a way that the Lord wires us. And at least for me, I think, saying, I like hanging out by myself, even though, as my wife would say, I have a major case of FOMO, just because I also want to be with people and enjoy that. But coming to say, like, I like reading. I like reading nonfiction more than I typically go towards fiction. Being able to label the things I like and just be like, yeah, that's it. I don't have to justify it. That's just what I enjoy. Has been, in a sense, like an act of faith and a discipline for me.
Yeah, it's taken me a while to like be okay with what I don't know. Does your inner middle schooler come out that's like, oh gosh, if someone makes fun of the thing that I like, I have to like change my answer?
It used to more.
Yeah.
I think honestly now, part of I know you made a joke about me making a joke about crying early on in this episode, but like through like wrestling with depression most of my life, and through working in therapy and coming in contact with like these little kid parts within me, I have developed a very, very rich inner world. And so like those things that bring that little kid part or parts of me great delight, I don't know. I don't necessarily care that much if someone thinks it's weird or doesn't think the same thing. I'm pretty comfortable with it and I enjoy it, so I'm not really going to let you take that from me just because you think it's weird.
Nice.
So,
yeah. That's the goal, hopefully, that we can all come to.
Yeah. Now, ask me again in a week and that might change. Maybe not in a year or two, but right now that's how I feel.
Yeah. This is not a question that I had thought of beforehand, but as you're saying this, I was just thinking about the concept of play and how it's important to play as adults. Is there something in particular that like transports you back to that childlike state?
I think I've been for the past couple years to work out. I go to a rock climbing gym, and I loved climbing things when I was a kid, and I always wanted to rock climb. And so whenever I got to climb a rock wall, it was super, super fun. And so there's something about that even that kind of transports me back to being a little kid, or even like now, I mean, literally getting to watch our son grow up. He's like a year old. Like, and lately I've like been tagging him and then running away, and he thinks it's so funny. And so like I'm getting to kind of like not really play hide and seek, but like do those little kid types of things. So I think play is incredibly important. Also, there's I'm trying to remember what the particular research is. I'm more familiar with, there's a theory of dreams that talks about dreams being a way in which we play while we sleep, and play is a way in which we also practice and train and prepare for things that are to come. And so, you can think about that with regard to climbing or like playing house or playing whatever. It's not only a way to enjoy something, but it's also a way of like practice with delight and fun. And so I think play can be a really profound way in which we train and grow and celebrate. And I'm also reminded of the last church I was a part of. There was someone who got really sick and was in the process of passing away, and someone asked him like, how's your relationship with God? And they said, my relationship with God right now is like two little kids playing together on the playground. That it was this like really beautiful, intimate thing. And so, anyways, I'll say I think play is very important. Leave it to me.
I'm sorry, I can't. You just brought this really sad thing.
Sorry, we can pause.
No, we don't have to pause. That was just, this is how you and I differ. For sure. So funny. It's funny. It's not funny that this person went through this horrible thing, but, or this thing that is just a part of life, but that's how you talked about play.
Yeah, it's like this. Play has to be a place that's safe, and thinking about even imagery in the Bible about Jesus being a good shepherd, and taking care of his sheep and resting and playing and eating, and like these types of things are very vulnerable, childlike needs in some ways that we have. May not think of play as that way, but it requires a level of safety even in the midst of like a lot of other things. And so I think just for me, at least personally, through wrestling with depression and anxiety and like other things, play at its best is like this really safe place in the midst of not separate from all of that other stuff. You can count on me to bring the sad things.
Yeah. Those things have to be separate for me. I'm not. We're just going to move forward with what I was thinking, which is, as you were talking about rock climbing, I don't think I'd put this together before, but I swam a lot as a kid. Like, we were at the pool all the time. And so I think for me, that instantly transports me back to this childhood version. So like doing a handstand in the pool, or, even playing like a game that we used to play, Marco Polo or whatever.
Sharks and minnows.
Yeah. Is a really good one for me. I think also sometimes running can be that way for me. Not like a let's go for a run kind of way, but like a let me chase you through the yard kind of way.
Okay, yeah, all right, I can see that. Because if you're about to say running, I'll be like, yeah, we are very different.
I used to love running.
Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good for you.
I don't anymore, but sure. I used to.
Good performer.
Yeah, former me loved it. Yeah. Now I think I got bored with that form of exercise.
Sure. Yeah.
But anyway, I think anything that I can do creatively, even if I'm not good at it, like
sure.
painting, pottery, or I think painting in general, anything that you can do like with your hands, or I think that's why baking that is like that for me. I baked a lot as a kid with my Nana, and so just like a lot of the concepts that I have for cooking and baking come a lot from that learning from when I was a kid. So yeah, I was trying to think what else. I feel like I want to be better at taking time to do those things. You know, because I'm just thinking like the simplicity of like my dog that constantly, he will never tire of bringing me something, one of his toys, to throw and then chase after and then run and bring it back.
Yeah.
And kids can be so similar to that, you know, once they find something that makes them laugh or...
Yeah, keep doing it.
Yes. Yeah.
Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Even if other people are like, why do you still enjoy this?
Yeah.
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll listen to like, well, I did this recently. Once maybe every year or so, I get back into what I liked when I was in high school, which is like punk rock music. And so classic example would be like older albums by Paramore. And so I would go and jam out to those. So like not that long ago, I turned those on with Caleb, and I think I danced through the whole album. And it was an amazing time.
I did love some Paramore. I definitely thought I was cooler than I probably was listening to that.
Hey, no judgment. You're cool because you're you.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, definitely music transports you back. I mean, I've heard it said that I think you always, whatever you liked, I think in your 20s or something, is very formative to like how you still listen to music for the rest of your life.
Interesting.
Cool. It might not be your 20s, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
But anytime I go back and listen to, I don't know, Smash Mouth even, or like, you know, when you're with your friends, particularly like if you're on a wedding together or something, you always go back to those jams that you used to love.
Everybody hops on the dance floor as soon as that like classic, whatever that was for your friend group comes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, a little bit deeper level, what is the difference between joy and happiness? Or is there a difference?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you talk to. So there's some language in Scripture. I'm thinking of Sermon on the Mount, for example. If I remember correctly, where Jesus, talks about blessed is the person who, whatever, hungers and thirsts for righteousness, but there's the kingdom of heaven, or something along those lines. There are ways, if I remember correctly, to translate blessed as happy is the one. So people might disagree on if there's a difference between joy or happiness. A lot of people that I've heard talk about joy as like an undergirding state of being, of something that you can tap into that is not necessarily dependent upon a circumstance, whereas happiness is more of like a momentary thing. Mm-hmm. And so what some people would say is that as Christians, we're meant to be joyful. That does not always mean that we're happy, and that joy can transcend or even be in the midst of sorrow and pain and all of this other stuff. Whereas happiness is not bad. It can be really good and beautiful, but also is more fleeting, momentary. I don't know necessarily what I think about that. Because, we talk about you can be joyful when you're sad. And, that's true, but also sometimes you just feel sad, and I think that's okay. And it depends on how you define it. Like, is joy just a feeling, or is it like a state of being? Is that different than a feeling? Is it joy is this extrinsic concept that you're tapping into the abundant, or rich and satisfying life that Jesus offers, or is it an intrinsic quality that you have? Anyways.
Yeah, those are good questions.
Lots of thoughts around it, because I always felt like I could never feel it. Mm-hmm. Never feel joy or happiness. And so I was like, okay, well then joy is different than happiness. But then I'm like, well then what the heck is joy? Is it, yeah. I don't know that I've heard an explanation for me, at least when I was really wrestling with depression, that really resonated with what I felt.
Yeah, I think for me too, we've talked in previous episodes about how ideas or concepts were presented to you in the church growing up, for those of us who grew up in the church. And joy is another one. We talked about fear too, and how I was very confused about the concept of fear of the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I think joy of the Lord was similar for me, because people would talk about joy in a way that I just never really understood. And I think I still carry some of that confusion with me. Mm. I mean, I definitely think there's a depth to joy that is different than happiness. I think what you're kind of mentioning with like fleeting or,
Sure.
you know, this concept, happiness is like a present state almost. Like in this moment, I feel happy, and usually you can point it back to a direct stimulus or a direct thing, I would think. But joy is more... Yeah, I think it does have to be a more constant thing.
It's a fruit of the spirit too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's tied to hope, definitely.
Say more on that.
I mean, for me, like, joy is knowing that, you know, sometimes literally, if you're going through something really hard and you have a knowledge that it will one day pass, whether that be here on the earth or future, fully pass all of those feelings, or all of those circumstantial things that are devastating, then the hope that will one day pass, the hope that Jesus will one day reconcile the whole world, I think to me is inextricably linked to joy. At least Jesus' joy.
Yeah, I'm reminded of where was it? I'm trying to remember exactly. Oh, it's in John 16, where Jesus is talking about this joy. And he says, so you have sorrow now, but I'll see you again, then you rejoice, and no one can rob you of that joy. And he describes it right before as like, it will be like a woman suffering the pains of labor. When her child is born, her anguish gives way to joy because she has brought a new baby into the world. And of course, that's not necessarily everyone's experience, and there's postpartum depression and all this other stuff. But I think the metaphor might even still work. I mean, still, it's used as metaphor, so obviously it still works, you know? That, like, even in the present moment, like what you said, that there's a hope that this, like, pain comes in the night, but joy comes in the morning. Joy is inextricably tied with, like, faith and trust. It's a fruit of the spirit that, like, even while I presently feel pain, even while I presently feel sorrow, I trust that God is working something within me, and forming me into who he's made me to be, and that he's coming back again to make all things right. And so those things can coexist at the same time. And what I love about this image is, like, everybody knows that, like, labor is painful. I obviously can't know anywhere near as much as, like, someone who's actually gone through it can possibly know. But it's, like, pretty commonly understood labor is painful. And so I think the metaphor also says that life ought to be understood as being inevitably, even inherently painful, at times bringing nausea, at times, like, affecting people differently. But, like, it's a very bodily ache.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in times of darkness, in times of pain, especially if it's a period of long suffering or, you know, just something that is not just going to go away in one day, whatever that time frame looks like, there has to be something that gets you through it. There has to be something that makes you say, I'm still going to wake up tomorrow morning. Something that pushes you through and gives you resiliency and helps you to keep going. And so in that way, I don't know that joy is always something that we're, like, feeling. Like, maybe it's not a state of being necessarily, or maybe it's not a
intrinsic. I say this gives the fruit of the spirit.
Yeah.
But it says, like, I need to do more research on this to know if this is accurate or not, so please don't quote me on this.
Yeah. Obviously, we're both still wrestling with it.
The joy of the Lord is my strength. Or the joy of the Lord is our strength. I can't remember the exact verse. It is the Lord's joy that is our strength. Not my happiness is my strength. That I wonder, at least for me, even in, like, dark periods or whatever, like, that what I tap on into and what I latch onto is I trust in the person of Jesus, and I trust in the rich and satisfying life that he offers. It is something that the Holy Spirit produces within me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think for me too, like thinking about like it might not always be a feeling, but like I hold fast to and I trust in the person of Jesus and trust that he will make all things right. And he's coming back again, and he brings great joy.
Yeah, I still wrestle with this verse that I think is in James where it says, like, count it all joy, my dear brothers, when you...
Yeah, encounter trials of various kinds.
Yes.
The testing of faith produces steadfastness.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that would be it. Say it faster.
My bead.
No, that was funny. Yeah, I struggle with that because it's like, what does it mean to count it joy? Count it all joy.
I almost wonder if it's like, if you have the option when there's a trial that comes your way, and you have the option of counting it as something that subtracts from your life, or rather adds to something. If what the invitation is, what if actually this trial is not just a loss, but actually is an opportunity for the Lord to form something within me. Namely, it goes on to steadfastness or endurance, so that you be perfect or complete, lacking in nothing. Mm-hmm. That what the Lord does in that is he taps you into a deeper sort of strength and joy. To like, I don't know, almost like mental math. That's easier for me to conceptually get around.
Mm-hmm. It sounds really beautiful when you put it that way, but definitely sometimes I don't know if it's even possible in the midst of certain types of pain.
Sure. Yeah, which might even be the, like, if they're saying, I think about this often in the scripture, if they're saying to count it all joy, that implies to me that at least some of us, if not all of us, do not naturally count it as such. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. And I think James is, in all honesty, one of those books that I wrestle with, at least New Testament wise, the most.
Interesting. I love James. They're so different. But yeah, that verse used to bother me too, because I'm like, how can I count this as like...
Yeah, I'm like, so I'm just supposed to be happy about this?
Which maybe that's the difference between happiness and joy too.
Or even what you're saying in somehow like almost turning it to a positive, like, but this will produce something in me. To me, like, when I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about, I'm like, that doesn't seem worth it to me, you know?
And maybe that's that endurance piece too that it talks about, or steadfastness, depending on your translation, that it will produce this endurance or steadfastness so that you be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. I used to swim, and I was a sprinter, for sure, not an endurance person. I'm thinking of a friend that we have recently met who likes running a lot, marathons, and like I think he's done like an ultra marathon or something. That sounds literally horrible to me. Yeah. But if I think about the process of growing endurance, I don't know a way to grow endurance that is not inherently painful and full of like your body literally like aching. Mm-hmm. But you're doing it like I'm thinking of Hebrews chapter 12. Jesus, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. Like the shame, the pain, the hurt, the sorrow are still there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's so tough about any conversation around emotions, is because it's so nuanced and integrated, and like joy and sorrow and like fear and anger and like all the things all together, plus it's going on in your body. So what's like going on like neurobiologically, what's going on with like the neurotransmitters in your head, what's going on based on diet or sleep or relationships or circumstances or spiritual stuff, like all of that is very, very integrated. And so I think to just even like count it all joy when you encounter trials. It does not dismiss the trials. Mm-hmm. And of course there's a whole conversation on what does it mean for it to be a trial. What is a trial? Is that every pain that you experience, is that a trial? And so I think there's a lot of questions just in all of that.
I was just thinking about your running analogy because, you know, especially that type of running, but any kind of running or exercise, you're pushing your body and there is a physical pain of soreness that is causing your muscles to get stronger. So this is strengthening of muscle when I'm sore. There's also potential for injury. And so sometimes when you push your body too far or too fast, or sometimes maybe you're just not even built for it, or you're aging. And so your body is like, just kidding. Remember that knee injury like from high school? It's going to affect you now. Whatever it is, like, I don't know. There's something in that analogy that's like, yes, sometimes the pain will make you stronger. And then sometimes it does cause you to limp or make you have to wear a brace or.
Yeah, no, that's very good. And then also even just like that, even if you are doing it right, like I remember in college when I first started like trying to go to the gym more and work out, and I started doing like leg day. I remember trying to walk to class and my legs, like I think they may have legitimately given out on me. Like I fell or was like really close to falling.
Yep.
And that also can totally happen. And that does not mean that you're not like trusting in God. And sometimes I think, I don't know, to use this running sort of imagery again, or sports, whatever. Again, like that, sometimes you go through particular periods that are like pressure cookers for that. Not saying the Lord causes that. And even thinking about this passage in James, it says, count it all joy when you encounter trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith. So there's a lot of questions in there. Just, we're not doing a deep dive into that passage.
Right.
But like, is every, thing that you go through, like, I think the Lord can use it and grow you with it, but that doesn't mean it's like from God by any means.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because later it says the Lord tempts no one.
Yeah, the Lord tempts no one.
In James.
And that every good and perfect gift comes from above, even up from the Father of lights, and going on from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think in that running analogy, like even what you're talking about with your leg day, I'm sure as a college guy, you were not thinking about rest or recovery. At least proper rest or recovery, which so many of us
I had
don't.
to walk to class, so I
did too. Yeah,
I just pushed myself too hard.
Yeah, but did you stretch? Did you eat things that recharge your muscles? Did you take ibuprofen? Did you ice your legs? Did you heat and ice? Probably not.
No, I probably could have done some better things. I think I probably stretched. And I don't think the day I did it, I felt like I pushed myself too much.
And you probably didn't, because sometimes...
It's like the first time you do it.
Yeah.
Anytime, when I had been out of rock climbing for a minute and I go back, like the muscles that were pretty used to being stretched, I feel it a lot more. Like in my forearms or my grip strength is gone. And it takes me a little bit longer to recover than when I'm in a regular, repeated rhythm of it. And so as a practical example, I feel like walking through most of my life struggling with depression, I feel like I have a lot more endurance now than I did several years ago. And it wasn't endurance that I wanted to get the way that I got.
Sure.
I'm glad I have it now.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful. Don't wish to upon anyone, nor do I want to be that again, feel those things again. But I know I very much could again.
Right.
So, and it's easier hindsight to be like, count it all joy, the Lord will work it together. And I'm like, yeah. When you're in the midst of it, it's like, yeah, but my legs hurt and I had a really hard day yesterday and it's hard to get up and walk. And that's real and honest and true.
Yeah. Sometimes it looks like laying on the floor and saying, do I believe this anymore? And literally wrestling with God.
Sure.
And saying, questioning and why and doubting. And sometimes people get up from that and some people don't. And so I do think that that's the endurance piece, that the joy has to come from a place of inner strength that can help you to stand up and maybe even just take half a step.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it reminds me of the importance of reading from the introvert over here, the importance of community.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Hebrews maybe it's chapter 10. I can't remember exactly where it was, but let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm, that God can be trusted to keep his promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. Then he goes on, the author of Hebrews goes on later to talk about these great examples of faith who didn't see what God had promised them, but kept walking in faith, often through incredible pain, incredible suffering, and did not see the fulfillment of it totally. And so it makes me think of, too, even for all of us, like part of what a community of faith is meant to do, ideally, is that you've got different people, theoretically, who are walking through hard things at different times. And so that we also can help provide that sort of endurance and stability for people to, in a sense, hold faith for one another. Now, our hyper-individualistic Western churches and just Western society doesn't necessarily know totally how to do that. And I'm still figuring out what does that look like. But I think we talk about this sometimes with church, right? When we sing to each other, not just to God. We're holding faith and space for one another. We rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. And so I think too with endurance and when people are on the floor and crying, like we need to have space in our communities where people can do that, and we can help walk with each other in that time. You know, when I'm coming out of a season where I just had to exert a whole lot more strength, and I may have more endurance right now, I might have a little more bandwidth to hold some of the things for you.
Right.
And same for you, you know, when you're in a different season.
Yeah, if you're coming out of a storm, it's a lot easier to sit with somebody in their storm than if you're in the midst of your own storm and you need someone to sit with you.
Yeah.
I think that's a natural segue into the scripture we're looking at today, where Jesus talks about laying down your life for your friends. I have a couple more questions, but we can pepper those in.
Great.
If we so choose.
Wonderful.
So we're going to be John chapter 15 and 16. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And here's the torch.
Great.
Passing it to you.
Okay, we'll edit this part out, I guess.
Ouch.
I'm just feeling slightly awkward, so we can just edit this a couple seconds out. What verses was it?
Well, John chapter 15, we were looking at, specifically, I think, the vine imagery.
Yeah.
And then also the second part of it, 12 through 17.
Great. Yeah, so John chapter 15 opens up with, in the Gospel of John, Jesus uses these I am statements where he is tying, it's like a self-revelation of who God is. Like, you want to know who God is, look at Jesus. He's tying it back into Exodus imagery where God reveals himself as I am or I will be, and he's saying I am. So he's tying himself into that. And here he says, I am the true grapevine and my Father is the gardener. And it goes on to talk about, I am the vine, you are the branches, remain in me, and I'll remain in you. And there's so much wisdom to be talked about in that. One fascinating thing, I was talking to somebody a while back who lived in Greece, and the New Testament, this was written in Koine Greek, and the word that's used for remain or abide is a word, if I remember it correctly, meno, which people in Greece, according to my friend, would say that is a way to say where they live. Still, like I meno in Athens, it's where I live. And so to remain in Christ is saying like I live, I dwell no matter where I go. Think of Psalm 23 language, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so going on into that, Jesus later on in the chapter talks about, I have loved you as the Father has loved me. This is verse 9, remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. In other words, if you want to talk about dwelling or abiding in the presence of God, that implies or means that you are doing the things that he says. You spend time with him, but it affects the way that you live. And then he says, I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. This is my commandment. love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay one's life down for one's friends, or to lay down one's life for one's friends. And you are my friends if you do what I command. It goes on to say that you're my friends. There's, obviously so much that we could unpack in that, but there's this parallel between, if you want to tap into the joy that God offers of like abiding in his presence, being with Jesus, becoming like him, and doing what Jesus did, to obey his commandments. And I think sometimes, at least for me, growing up, I think my perception was that doing a lot of the things that God commanded was not enjoyable. It was this like, do what God commanded and it's kind of going to be awful because you don't want to do it. Like that was kind of the undergirding like assumption. But what Jesus portrays here is like, you want to tap into this deep joy, do what I say to do. To go back to that imagery we were using before of like running, or like an athlete or whatever. Not that this is the metaphor Jesus is using here, but like a good coach will even instruct you and tell you, hey, do these things so that you can get better. And sometimes you're like, no, like that sounds odd. What in the world does this drill have to do with me becoming who I want to be, performing how I want to perform, whatever. And Jesus is saying here, the things that I've said to you to do, to implement into your life, to love your neighbor, to pray for those who persecute you. These things are actually meant for your good. And do these things. And even later, it talks about the world hating you. Even then, like your joy will overflow. Like not just a little bit, but like will pour out of you. And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we're also reading through the Bible in 2 years at our church. And so we're right now reading a lot about David's story in the Old Testament, and also kind of reading in John. So it's like paralleling almost for me this life that, we get a lot of stories about David and who he was. And a lot of the Psalms that David writes will say things like, I delight in the law of the Lord. And so this idea that, for even as you're saying that, it's so relatable to think like these laws must have been terrible, or like even now, like what God asks me to do is like terrible and not fun, and it's a lot of do's and don'ts, but it's really like for David, who lived in the midst of this law, he delighted in it. So what does that mean? And then for us, like to delight in the Lord, and to delight, we know the Lord delights in us as his children. And so, there's something in that, I think, too, because, even Jesus is talking here about his commandment, which is that you love one another as I've loved you. And so his command is to love. Yeah.
Which, how does he describe love, right? It's laying down one's life for one's friends. Self-sacrificial, right? Yeah. Not like love so that they give you all this. Love by giving of yourself. And that's how you find joy.
Yeah. I think that's why I thought it was a natural segue from what you were talking about with friendship, because it's like, do we do this? Like, what does a friendship like that actually look like? And have I seen that fully?
Yeah, especially where both parties are like giving and loving with that mentality. And we're humans, right? So like, I imagine there's different seasons where different people take on sort of have more to give, right?
Yeah, we fail at that, sure.
But yeah, I think I think about this with Nashville too, and it's probably true in a lot of places. But we live in such an individualistic society, and then even in Nashville and other places, it's such a networking society. And I know when I went to Belmont University, I had friends who were in music industry or seeking to become musicians, songwriters, whatever, and that was something that sometimes they would struggle with. It's like, what is even the balance with networking, which can be good, but networking can be more so about knowing people for what they can do for you, making connections for what they might offer you, whereas self-sacrificial love, like Jesus is talking about here, seems to be more not about what they offer you at all. Love them as I have loved you.
Yeah.
And For God so loved the world. Not because they offered him a lot. We bring him delight, but like, yeah, it's very different. And I think it's nice in theory, but hard in practice to live that out. Like, what does it look like for me to love my friend, or even my wife, or whatever? Like, not just for what they offer, but fully, just because they are made in the image of God and God deeply loves them, and to lay down my life, which Jesus obviously like literally laid down his life, but most of us that probably won't be the case. But what does it look like to lay down my preferences, my wants, my desires, my opinions, even for the sake of the flourishing of another person? And Jesus doesn't just say for your singular friend, for your friends.
Yeah. Yeah, which, I mean, we're kind of, at least you and I are kind of steeped in this like communal idea.
Sure.
And what that means for the church. But I say steeped, not that we're great at it, but that we're learning about it, right? And it is really hard to imagine what that kind of love and what that kind of friendship looked like even then, when it was a life or death situation for most of them. Really a lot of scripture, it's life or death, right? We see like even David and Jonathan's relationship tested by Jonathan's dad's ill will towards David. And so I do think a lot of it, though, is this idea of simple living. And so I really do think that it's really hard to be that way when we live in a comparison world. And a lot of what social media or our phones are, like, they're meant to distract us. They're meant to keep us wanting. And even like in our consumeristic society, is that a word? Society, where we're constantly being marketed to, like, and told, like, you will not be satisfied until you have X. And then once you have X, you will not be satisfied until you have Y. And so it's just, it's not only countercultural, I don't know. It seems even more countercultural now.
Yeah. It's very counterformative to like that we've been, we talk often about how we've been formed and shaped by really everything. The culture that we're around, the people we're around, the books we read, the TV shows, the movies, the mall, the Amazons, all of that portrays a certain message, right? That is very individual oriented and consumeristic and all of this stuff. And so we read this, and this is even, I feel like, seems harder for us because we have been formed in the opposite direction. And so it's more about what I get than about giving. Ironically, it's giving actually starts with the recognition that you've been given to greatly by God. But yeah, it's counterformative. So we don't start on like a neutral playing field. So we have to move from this, like, it's just about getting primarily, even our relationship with God, which is, true things like you pray and you get to spend eternity, pray this prayer, you get to spend eternity with God, whatever. You trust in the Lord with all your heart. You get the fruit of the Spirit if you walk in his ways. Follow him and you can find more peace and joy, and comfort in the sorrow. All this stuff tends to be very like individual heavy. And about what I get. And so this is saying actually how you tap into this joy is through obeying him, following him, and also through laying down your life for one's friends. It was communal. And so we're not starting in neutral, we're starting over here on one side, and God is inviting us to be really trained and formed and shaped and move into the other direction. And so I think the tension is like, how do we live here in the like, I know this is what we're meant to do, but I'm not there yet. And on the flip side, like, or related to that, also having grace for yourself to know that you're starting over here. Don't expect that you're going to be, fully communal next week. But it will take, going back to the working out imagery, it will take getting your legs sore and like working it out to be able to do that. And especially when you start like trying to embody it, and not everybody that you're trying to embody this like laying down your life to is going to do the same thing back. And that was Jesus, right? Like laid down his life for the sake of the world. And not everybody responded to it in like a, yes, I'll follow you way.
I'm about to say something really bold.
Okay, do it.
It feels bold to me. Other people might be like, that's it. But we cannot have this until we lay this down.
Ooh. And for those listening, lay the phone down.
Yeah. Oh, right. You can't see it if you're listening.
Yeah.
Duh. Yeah. We cannot have what Jesus is talking about here unless we lay our phones down.
Ooh. Explain what you mean.
I mean, how many times have you been at a lunch with somebody and either you get a phone notification or you get something on your watch or they do.
Sure.
You stop to text. You stop to quickly, like you cannot be fully engaged with someone when you're also communicating with someone else that's not even there. And that's not even to say all of the social media or like how many times have you been in a room and one person picks up their phone and so everyone else does and you're all sitting on your phone staring at the screen. Like I can point to like even in my family alone, like I have a ton of cousins on my mom's side. And so like whenever our families got together when we were younger, we didn't have smartphones. And so we were, literally it was just about being in each other's company, whether that, there were obviously like fights and joys and all of the things. But like now it is such that every single person in the room has a phone. And so it's like one person is on their phone and then everybody's on their phone and you sit in silence. And so it's like this thing that you've come together to do. You've literally traveled for.
Sure.
And this is just this one example, but it happens constantly.
Yeah.
Everybody is on their phone. How can you feel present? How can you feel engaged? How can you feel connected when parts of you are completely disconnected?
Yeah, it's this illusion of connection. And this is so much tied with joy and happiness. There's a book, I can't remember if I've referenced it on here before, but I've certainly referenced it in life for a while. It's called Thrilled to Death by Dr. Archibald Hart. To be honest, I haven't read the whole thing. But the thing that stuck with me is there's this thing called anhedonia, which is the inability to experience pleasure. Typically, that was associated with people who were depressed or struggled with depression, walking through difficult things, the inability to experience pleasure. But his premise was that we as a society have become thrilled to the point of death, that we've been so constantly stimulated that we've lost the ability to experience pleasure. He ties this in with basically what happens to us when we are stimulated, which when you're stimulated in a pleasurable sort of way, it's a dopamine release in your brain, and increasingly you need more and more and more and more of that to release to get the same level of happiness. And because in our constant stimulation, particularly with our phones, we get notifications, which initially brought us a dopamine hit. Now we need more and more and more and more. So when you first got a phone, if you had one friend that followed you and you liked each other's pictures, I guess even before they didn't even have like buttons, but you just had a friend on there, like, this is really cool. And then you start getting more and you need more and more and more and more and more. And so it leads us to this inability to experience joy, pleasure, delight. And so, I think like you're saying, I mean, quite literally on like a biological level, I think it's pretty much impossible to experience joy or delight or even just like this positive dopamine release in your brain to the way that I think we're meant to without putting down stimulation and even allowing ourselves to enter into boredom. And by entering into boredom and quiet and stillness, not that those are the same thing, they're not, but entering into that and dealing with the dark and hard things that you don't want to deal with, that's actually can be a pathway into joy, not through avoidance.
Yeah. Or putting it down and delighting in the people that are in your presence.
Yeah.
I how many times have you had a conversation with someone and they say, hold on, and you're in the middle of saying something and they're texting somebody or emailing somebody, like even with your work, like you are constantly, I get frustrated a lot of times because it's just like there's so many ways people can like get a hold of us now without our permission almost.
Yeah.
so not only text messaging, but we have all these apps that are also messaging, and we have our social medias where people message you and or comment on your post, or, you know, how many social media influencers have you seen publicly wrestle with what it means for somebody to cyberbully you or to just say whatever they want to say, and then you see it and you're a real person. There's so much in this that's like, we've forgotten how to just sit with people and leave the phone at the door or in your car. Like, how it even makes me cringe to think about it, you know? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
How it has to take real intentionality and uncomfortableness to be like, hey, I have a basket by the door. Would you mind putting your phone in it?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And mine will also be there.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to wear my Apple Watch during dinner. And I'm not going to, or what, you know?
Yeah. And to be clear too, I mean, obviously, like, we're using technology to record all this stuff. So, like, it's not that they're inherently bad, although sometimes I think maybe.
No, but there are real people behind those that are using notifications, dopamine levels, all of those things to get you to stay more on the technology.
I've heard it said with social media that you are the product that people are after.
Yes.
They quite literally, the algorithms are even based around getting you to spend more time on said platform. And so advertisers, whoever, like, they want to have a hook. They want to get you to stay on it. And I get it. Like, I don't know that all of that's, like, inherently wrong, but it is something for us to be aware of, that they're aiming to buy us. I'm reminded of John chapter 10, where Jesus says that the thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy, and that his purpose is for the sheep to have a rich and satisfying or abundant life. And so part of the question with discipleship and joy and all this stuff is, like, what are the things that are aiming to steal and kill and destroy the life that God has given you or means to give you? Are you even aware that they're promising you life, promising you happiness, promising you influence, promising you something? Are you aware at what cost? Like, at least be aware.
Yeah, and they say that sitting is the new smoking. And so, like, we're sitting, like, I mean, we have a lot of heart disease issues and things from just people not getting up.
Sure.
But these devices are meant to keep you sitting and looking and at your desk or watching TV or binging or, you know, we have to be aware. It's not that it's bad, like, inherently bad, but, like, just passively letting it happen is going to affect us. Yeah.
You were being formed and shaped by things, by someone, by something, by some things. Period. Are you being formed and shaped into the person that you think you're meant to become? Mm-hmm. Even outside of a Christian perspective. Like, are you aware of what is shaping you? And is it shaping you into the person that you think you were even meant to become? I'd argue the person you're meant to become is someone who loves the Lord your God with all that you are and loves your neighbor as yourself, a person of love, filled with the Holy Spirit, follows Jesus. And Jesus here makes a promise. If you follow him, you will find a rich and satisfying life. Yeah. That's not, like, all happy and easygoing and fun all the time, but it's like, follow him even into this self-sacrificial love. And even when you walk in through suffering, Psalm 23 talks about, like, he leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me. Like, even then, like, that the Lord is with you and he's forming you and shaping you into who you're becoming. Who's forming you? Who's shaping you? Who's coming up with that stuff? Because someone has.
As a side note, I think we should do a segment on here that says that's Trey speaks fast scripture and see how fast you can say it.
Great, got it.
You're so quick at it, which I get tongue-tied very quickly. So, but anyway, yeah, it's so hard. I mean, maybe you don't even believe this stuff. Maybe you're like, okay, all of this, what are you even talking about? Like, this stuff being like what Jesus says. Like, maybe that's not your desire to live a life that is pleasing to him.
Yeah. But how's your life working out?
Yeah. How is it? these concepts of abiding and slowing and being with other people and loving other people, like, those are good things. I think most people would say those are good things. And so
yeah, we've been reminded of verse talks about be still and know that I am God. I quoted one slow. There you go.
That was a good one to do, like the
slow. Yeah. Be still and know that I'm God. For a lot of us, because we are so constantly stimulated, when we are still, because I remember this when I first started trying to be still as I was trying to work through some sin issues in my life. It was actually really hard and really uncomfortable and really dark and scary and sad and all of the, like nothing really, not many things that were enjoyable. I just knew that's what I needed to do. How many of us can honestly say that in the stillness, we actually can tap into knowing that He is God? Because I think part of what Jesus offers is with this rich and satisfying life that you actually, with people, you can tap into His love and know that He is God. But also in the stillness, in the quiet, in the no one's around, you're not on your phone, you're nowhere near any of it. You can know that He's God and that He's good at a deep core level of your being. And I think that's a different message than what society as a whole, at least like the systems that are, offer us.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about is like peace, like coming to inner peace and external peace in a lot of ways. Like, I'm just thinking like something that definitely brings me joy is just slow mornings with coffee and no Instagram and no news and no other things, but just sitting and maybe conversating with Daniel or just sitting with scripture and then talking about it with Daniel. Like those things are so much better. Like I know at my gut level and I feel so much better when those are the types of things I'm doing. Yet I am so pulled towards technology and picking up my phone, and it's so hard to combat those things even when you're actively trying to combat them.
It sounds so idealistic.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that sounds great to slow. Yeah, that sounds great to put away my phone. Like, I have to work a lot.
Yeah.
We have a baby, who keeps us busy, which ironically that helps me be a whole lot more present and in the moment, generally speaking. But yeah, it's so, once again, counterformative that we're really heavily being tugged in the other direction, and it will naturally feel incredibly uncomfortable venturing into it. So what are some practices that you have found to be helpful into walking into what Jesus has for you, a rich and satisfying, abundant life, practices that cultivate a posture of joy?
Yeah, so I think practicing celebration is a big one.
It's like birthday parties?
Can be. Celebration or gratitude. And so I think that's something we often don't talk about, which is that, there were so many festivals and feasts and things that the Lord like told His people to partake in, and we don't do that anymore. We don't, at least my culture doesn't do that. I'm not saying no one does not anyone does that, but celebrating in terms of just like, again, just breaking bread with your friends, or maybe having a glass of wine with a friend and just talking to them on the back porch, or celebrating life together and celebrating other people's wins, and being happy for the things that maybe somebody's longed for a long time, and then when it happens, like actually popping some confetti or, you know, like.
Yeah, if that brings them joy and not stress. For cleaning. But yes.
Bring a broom if you do it.
Bring a broom. Clean it up for them.
Or a dustbuster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that and the practice of gratitude and recognizing the blessings that you have been bestowed and actively maybe journaling about those things or writing them down even at the end of the night can give you a peace of mind that almost nothing else will.
Yeah. Reminded as you're talking about celebration, there's a passage in Deuteronomy 14 where it says, "Now when the Lord your God blesses you with a good harvest, the place of which we chooses for his name to be honored might be too far for you to bring the tithe." But then it goes on to say, when you arrive at this place, you may use the money to buy any kind of food you want, cattle, sheep, goats, wine, or alcoholic drink. Then feast there in the presence of the Lord your God and celebrate with your household. Like, celebrating is like, I mean, literally right there. I mean, some of that might make some of y'all uncomfortable hearing that this is also in Scripture. You know, I mean, for some things you can be overly indulgent, but there's also a sense in which like feasting in the presence of the Lord is like just full of delight. And I'm reminded of a story in the Gospels, I think in maybe John chapter 2, where Jesus turns water into wine, not at the beginning of the party, but turns it into the best wine at the end of the party, and they make a deal about it because normally you don't bring out the best wine at the beginning or at the end, so you bring it out at the beginning. My working theory is because people won't notice if you bring out the good wine later on, but Jesus like kept the party going, celebration, and I think for me like that practice is so helpful, celebrating other people, and then also realizing like it's good to just like celebrate small things, to enjoy things. Like if you like having a dance party, like randomly having a dance party with friends, with your spouse, by yourself, with your dog, like whatever, you know, whatever the thing is, do those things that bring you delight. I think so much of my understanding of God has been shaped through like depression and anxiety and other stuff. And then also a narrative that was like surrender everything to God and like want God more than you want any of this other stuff, which is true. But I think for me, it was a harder time to realize like God does actually like want us to celebrate and like delight and have fun with friends, like, and that's actually really, really beautiful and good. And so for those of you that might struggle with depression or anxiety too, like think of what are some of those things that may have used to bring you delight or enjoyment. Maybe it's different now. Like do some of those things, as long as they're not like, you know, sinning or something, but like do some of those things as an act of worship. Like Sabbath is another practice for me that is like aimed about delighting in the presence of the Lord, which isn't just reading my Bible and praying. It's like doing things that are fun and enjoyable, practices of gratitude. Anytime that you feel bad, like saying a couple of things you're thankful for. I did that for a while and I still felt really bad, but I certainly saw the things as being really delight bringing.
Yeah, it's not necessarily to fix it. It's just to say, like, also this. Like, can I hold both?
That's good. Yeah.
And, you know, I think about a period of long suffering that I had and grieving, and somebody wise told me, like, you are going to have to make yourself go do things that are fun.
Yeah. Isn't it weird that we have to be told that? But I get it. Like,
not really. And I mean, it is, but not when you go through something like that. I mean, because it's all consuming, and you have to do something that also allows you to experience the goodness of life and the joy of life. So, I mean, that's different for everybody, what that might look like.
Sure.
Yeah. But sometimes, even if you don't feel like, I mean, you might get there and feel like, I don't really want to be here, but you still do it because it.
Yeah. Can you explain how that's different from like just putting on a mask or like a face? So I'm asking for younger me who was like really depressed and going into a room where everybody's celebrating and like trying to be happy.
Oh.
Can you explain like how does that look different for you?
Yeah, I don't know that I would have wanted to walk into a party at that point, but if I went to a fancy dinner with just my husband and I, and we just enjoyed the food.
That's helpful. So, like, it can look different.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Or maybe it is like, I'm just going to go, we're going to plan a trip to Disney World if that's fun for you. Or go to a theme park for the day. Or maybe it is... doing a high ropes course. I don't know what the thing is. Yeah.
That's helpful.
Yeah, it's not like I'm going to go pretend. Like, you definitely don't want to put yourself in a position where you feel like you have to be something for someone else. It's the practice is for you, not for the benefit of others in that circumstance.
Sure.
So,
yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah. So maybe the fun thing is just I'm going to go walk around at the farmer's market and I am going to get the donut that I love there.
I would hear things like, and I think I've said things before, like that you act yourself into a way of feeling. Which part of me still is like, there's some truth in that. But the flip side is also like, yeah, I mean, there's like some stuff like when you smile a lot, like it does some things for you. But the flip side, is like that also doesn't necessarily fix your problem. Like when I was like saying 3 things I was grateful for all the time, like that didn't change the fact that I still was like depressed and like having panic attacks. But I love like Cheez-Its, and so I was like super thankful for like I was like, these are a gift from God, like this is amazing. And so I think perhaps like what even you're getting at is just like if you are really in a dark place, allow yourself in the midst of the dark place also to feel joy. Or happiness, or pleasure, or delight. Don't beat yourself up about it if you do the thing and it doesn't happen. It's a practice, meaning it's not perfect.
Right.
That you're growing into it. And the things that you used to like, especially with depression, often is associated with like a lack of energy. And it's like really hard to just get out of bed and do anything. And things that used to sound fun don't sound fun anymore. But yeah, like allow yourself to be happy, which also means that you have to allow yourself to be sad too, and to allow those things to even coexist. And if you feel happy in a really dark time, you're like, I shouldn't feel happy. It's okay. Like allow it to come.
Because you can't sit in it constantly. You can't sit in pain and sadness constantly either on the flip side of that thing.
It's not fun for sure.
Yeah, and so if the only way you can somewhat break that is I'm going to get up and play a song that I know I love. That's a win,
Yeah, or hang out, like you said, with somebody that knows you, knows what you're walking through, or even is walking through it with you on a very personal level. Like, you don't have to put on a face. They know. They're with you.
Yeah. Maybe it's going to a comedy show and just laughing at something dumb for a while.
Yeah. I had a friend that sent me dark memes when I was really struggling. And for some reason, I don't know if I find them super funny now or if I would recommend them. I don't remember well enough to know. But, like, they were one of the few things that could make me laugh at that time. Yeah, I think, celebration, feasting also is another practice. Diet does play a lot into how you're feeling in your body and all this stuff. But, like, also, like, if food is something that makes you happy and you're really, really wrestling with depression or anxiety, it's not bad to, like, at least in my opinion, to go get, like, a cheeseburger and fries and a milkshake if that, like, makes you feel happy. Sometimes, you know what I mean?
Sounds delicious.
Like, sometimes I just needed that. I tried to do, like, a strict diet thing when I was in the midst of really bad depression, and it was hard, but I think what I didn't realize, it was hard because I was really depressed, and food was one of the few things that was like, oh man, this is great. I mean, if you couldn't tell by me saying, I was like, Jesus, are from God.
I get that. I mean, when you are operating out of a place of scarcity, restricting yourself from something further is probably can be more harmful than...
Yeah, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
Some things are bad.
Sure.
Like, don't go and drink, like, a ton and get drunk, you know, like, if you're sad. Like,
yeah.
You know?
We're not talking about substance abuse, but...
Fair enough.
But it might not be the time to do Whole30, you know? It might not be the time to do... Oh, is that what
That's
you did?
Exactly
oh my gosh, I didn't mean it as in like you.
No, I mean, I think you're right.
Yeah, it might not be the time
for me.
Yeah, even to practice fasting. I mean, there's seasons for things.
Maybe fast from social media, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and know yourself, and this, you know, where holistic care is important, and knowing yourself, and like maybe it is your diet, and you need to change it, and that will help.
Right.
That's why celebration and feasting and like gratitude, these are all like kind of flexible practices that can manifest differently for each person. Even as we talked about before, like the things that bring us delight would be different.
Yeah.
There's some overlap, and that's okay. So be okay with if you're sad, or also some of y'all like, aka me, like be okay if something like makes you happy or brings you joy. It's not simple. Right.
Yeah, you don't want it to be like, I mean, a lot of people have things with food that like it might actually cause self-hatred to like, maybe in the moment it will feel good to eat a cheeseburger and then you're going to like really hate yourself for forever. Or the rest of the day or whatever. That's maybe not healthy in that situation. So you do have to know for yourself like what will be a healthy outlet.
Yeah, we'll say self-awareness, and it's the tension of like, you don't want to just chase happiness as like the thing that's your end-all be-all, because if you're constantly chasing it, you will never find it, or it will be constantly fleeting, and you'll have for moments, and then you'll be perpetually disappointed. But also on the flip side, you do have to like, because you don't have to. It's good for you to allow yourself to like feel happy and have practices of celebration, and where you can like say, like the psalmist says in Psalm 23, that surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And he says that right after talking about the Lord preparing a table for him in the presence of his enemies, and walking in the valley of the shadow of death. Like, all those things can and do coexist.
Just bringing it back full circle, I have to stop myself from just singing when you say certain things that remind me of songs. So, surely goodness and mercy will follow me.
It's very country of you.
Yeah, that was a country version of it, but
nice.
I don't know why I chose to sing it that way, but these are the type of things that went through my mind.
Brings you to life. You know,
it would break a lot. It would make a lot more interruptions in our conversation. So I'm not gonna do that.
That's fair.
Also, I don't know the copyright infringements for some things.
That's true.
We don't want to pay for anything.
We don't
for our 5 listeners that might report us.
Yeah,
just kidding.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, okay. Do you have any lasting thoughts, or actually, what is one thing you could do today to practice joy or to celebrate?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Really wonderful question. I think for me, either having a beer or a glass of wine sounds really nice today.
All right.
So, yeah, that sounds really delightful.
Okay. Love it.
Yeah. What about you?
I asked this question and had no answer in mind, so there you go. But I think spending time, so we just moved in our new house, and getting some more things settled and dreaming about different rooms and what I want sounds really fun and celebratory for like the space that we have been gifted.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Hey, well, thank y'all for tuning in for another episode of our Faith and Mental Health. series. We hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about faith and mental health, feel free to email us or DM us on social media, and who knows, your question could spark a podcast, which would be pretty cool. But hope and pray you have a wonderful day and that you do something that sounds fun today.
And celebratory.
Amen.
Bye, guys.